All right, guys, so we're now on the last page here, number 7. It says Kristen paid $47.32 to fill her car's gas tank with gas. If the gas tank was empty and the cost of the gasoline was $3.64 per gallon, how many gallons does the gas tank hold? So what operation are we going to be doing there? If this is how much she paid for gas and this is how many or how much it was per gallon, how do we find out how many gallons her tank will hold? On this one, we will be doing division. We are going to divide how much she paid by how much she paid for each gallon, and then that will tell us how many gallons she has total. So our number model, our number sentence, should be 47.32 divided by 3.64. Now we need to set this up. I'm going to do it up here in the corner. These tests don't give you tons of room, so make sure you're trying to do it neatly. Writing small so it doesn't take up the whole page so I can see your work, okay? So 47.32 is our dividend, so that goes on the inside. And 3.64 is our divisor, so that goes on the outside. And we have a decimal in our divisor, so what do we have to do? Someone raise your hand. Tell the sub, what do we do with that decimal in our divisor? So we have to try to make this number into a whole number, so we move our decimal place to the right until it becomes a whole number. So now instead of 3.64, we have 364. If we move it twice in our divisor, we move it twice in our dividend. And then we move it in our divisor, we move it in our dividend, and then we move it up into our quotient. So then we can work this out. 364 can't go into 4, can't go into 47, can go into 473 one time, which gives us 364. 3 minus 4, we can't do that, so we borrow, that becomes a 6. Then we end up with 13 minus 4, gives us 9. 6 minus 6 is nothing. 4 minus 3 is 1. And then we have a 2 to bring down there. So now we have 364 into 1092. We can kind of estimate here that this is 300. So if we double that, it's going to be 600 something, maybe close to, or actually it'll be 700 because the 60 will put us over that next 100 if we double it. So we know that we could do it 3 times. So let's try 364 times 3. 4 times 3 is 12. Carry my 1. 3 times 6, 18. Plus 1, 19. 3 times 3, 9. Plus 1, 10. So we get exactly 1092. Hang on a second, guys. You hear my dog barking? He wants back inside. So our division tells us then what our solution is. We get exactly 10,000 or 1092. So that means we are finished. So that means that she can get her gas tank holds 13 gallons. All right, number 8, on to some percentage problems. So we should immediately be thinking of your proportion here. And if you need to, remember, maybe write it over to the side. Part over whole equals percent over 100 to help you remember that proportion. So we have 30% of 50 is what number? So after the of, what did we say that number usually is? If it's of that, that's our total, so that's our whole. So when we set this up, this is our whole, this is obviously our percent. So someone raise your hand and tell how to set up this proportion. So we would end up with, we don't know our part, so we would end up with x over 50 equals 30 over 100. So step 1, build our proportion. Step 2, cross multiply. So we end up with 100x equals, remember we can multiply these numbers and then add on our 2 zeros. So we end up with 1,500. Someone tell how to get x by itself now. Raise your hand. We divide it by itself. So on this time, it's dividing by 100. That's now gone, and our x is alone. If we divide by 100 over here, then we divide by 100 over here. We can cancel out these zeros, so then we end up with 15 divided by 1, which is the same as 15. So what number is 30% of 50? 15. Now, letter B, we have 65% of 80 is what number? So again, we have of 80, so that tells us 80 is our whole, and then 65 is obviously our percent. So we're setting that up again. Again, we will need x in our part because we don't know the part yet. X over 80 equals 65 over 100. Take a second, cross multiply that. Remember, you can do your 65 times 8 and then add on your 0. Let's take a second and do that. So 65 times 8, so we end up with 8 times 5 is 40, carry your 4. 8 times 6 is 48, so just had a brain fart. 48 plus 4 gives me 52, so I end up, and then I need to add on that last 0, so I end up with 5,200, and then on the other side I have 100 times x, so that's just 100x. Then we need to get x by itself, so we divide it by itself. So whatever is next to x, it's not always going to be 100, right? Sometimes it'll be other numbers depending on what piece of your proportion you're missing. This time it's a 100 again, so we divide that. The 100s are gone, x is alone. If we divide this by 100, we divide this by 100. Cancel out those zeros, end up with 52 over 1, which is the same as 52. So 65% of 80 is 52. Letter C, explain how you found letter A. 30% of 50 is what? So here you can just give a brief explanation here of your proportion. So you can just say, I knew this piece and that piece, and I used that to build my proportion. So what did we know? We have, I know 50 is the whole, and 30 is the percent. So I set up my proportion to solve. And then we're going to do the same thing on number 9. Work out your proportions here. Now we have 20 is 10% of what number? So what do we say if the number is before is? That is usually the what. Raise your hand and tell what the number is usually before the word is. Usually the part. That is usually the part. So we know our part and we know our percent. So once again, we just fill in our proportion. So we have the part now, so we put 20 over. We don't have the whole now, so that's where our x goes, equals our percent over 100. So there's our proportion. Now we cross multiply. We end up with 10 times x gives us 10x equals 20 times 100. Remember, when we multiply by 100, we can move our decimal place to the right twice. The decimal after a whole number is here, so if we go to the right twice, that would then give us the same as just adding on those 2 zeros. So then we would end up with 2,000. Now getting x by itself, what would I need to divide by? Need to divide it by itself, right? So this is a 10 now. That's gone. X is now alone. If I divide by 10 here, I divide by 10 here. I have one set of zeros that I can cross out, and then I end up with 200 divided by 1, which is the same as 200. So 20 is 10% of 200. And then the next one, again, we have the number before is, so that tells us automatically that that is the part. 35 is 20% of what number? So we don't know the whole, we don't know what the total of our of the number is. So setting up our proportion, we end up with 35 over x equals 20 over 100. Cross multiplying, we end up with 20x equals, and then again, we move our decimal to the right twice, so this will end up as 3,500. Now, someone raise your hand and tell me how to get x by itself. So we have to divide it by itself. So that means on this one, we're going to divide by 20. That's a gone. Now we have x by itself. If we divide by 20 here, then we divide by 20 here. We have one set of zeros we can x out, and we end up with 350 divided by 2. If we work that out, you could do that maybe in your head. If not, just work it out like a normal division problem. Divided by 2. 2 can go into 3 one time. Subtract that. We get 1. Bring down your 5. 2 can go into 15 7 times, which gives me 14. Subtract that. You end up with 1 again. Bring down your 0. 2 can go into 10. 5 times gives exactly 10. So 350 divided by 2 gives you 175. So 35 is 20% of 175. And then your explanation is going to be very similar to your explanation on number 8, except for you're going to tell what you know. So it says problem A, so this problem. So you're going to tell that you know that this number is the part instead, and that this is the percent. So again, you use that proportion to solve. I'm not going to write that on this one because just to save a little time, but on your test, these are going to be very similar answers, just depending on what they give you as the pieces. Now, number 10 says, a salad dressing is 40% peanut oil. Greg wants to make 5 cups of dressing. How much peanut oil does he need? So, what are we going to do on this? We have a percent. We see that. And then we have, he wants to make 5 cups of dressing. So, what is the 5? Who can tell me? We know when we set up our proportion that the 40 has to go over 100. That always goes, the percent always goes over 100. So now, what piece do we have? Is the 5 part, or is the 5 the whole that he's going to make? The 5 is the whole. That's the total amount of dressing that he wants to make. So that tells me that X needs to go in the part, because the peanut oil is only part of the dressing. It's not the whole amount. So now, again, we can just work out our proportion like normal. Cross multiply. 100 times X gives us 100X. 40 times 5, we can multiply 4 and 5 together, add your 0 on. So 20 plus another 0 gives me 200. Get X by itself. Divide it by whatever number is being multiplied by. X is alone. Divide the other side by the same number. I happen to have 2 zeros that I can cross out. So I end up with 2 divided by 1, which is the same as 2. So my solution says, how much peanut oil does he need? We're talking in cups. So we need 2 cups. And our last problem. Julie withdraws $175 from her bank account. This amount is 25% of her total savings. How much did she have in her account originally? So again, we have a percent and we have this number here. So we know that the 25 has to go over 100. So now we need to figure out the $175. Is that part, or is that her total amount that she has? Raise your hand and tell what you think. $175, that is our part, because it says she withdraws it from her total. What does her account have originally? So the original number would be our total. So we don't know our total, so that's where our X goes. So we end up with 175 over X. Again, now we have our proportion set up. Simply cross multiply and solve our proportion. So we have 25 times X, 25X, equals 175 times 100. Move our decimal to the right 2 times. We end up with 17,500. Getting our X by itself, divide by whatever we have here. So this time is 25. That's now gone. X is alone. Whatever we divide here, we have to divide over here. So we divide it by 25. Now we don't have any zeros to cross out, so now we need to actually work out this division. 17,500 divided by 25. And remember how we talked about on our homework, try and keep your proportion nice and even, set up nicely. If you have other work, try to do it off to the side so I can see your proportion alone and your other work by itself, so it's not all mixed together. So I can make sure you get points for, even if you get your final answer wrong, if you can get a point for setting up the proportion correctly. So 25 into 1 can't happen. 25 into 17 can't happen. 25 into 175. Think in quarters, right? 25 cents. If we have $1.75, that tells us 7 quarters, right? 4 quarters would get us to the 100. 3 quarters would be the 75. So that gives us exactly 175. So if this is 0 and these are zeros, then that tells me I can just fill in my zeros. So that tells me then that her total is the X equals 75. And since we're talking in dollars, her original amount in her savings account was $700. All right, so make sure you study over this tonight. Tomorrow, so Thursday, you will have your test on the 14th. So take your time tonight, study over. Remember, adding, subtracting, we line up the decimals. Multiplying, dividing, we do not. So take your time, make sure you check this over tonight, and we'll take the test tomorrow morning.